Hey everybody, how's it going? We had a request on the channel for a PETG video. So from Tunny 1988 requested a PETG video. So here we go. I've been obviously got my PLA profile pretty well tuned. It's pretty nice. I like it. And so this is for PETG, and we'll do it kind of fast. I'll go through the settings. We'll go through it kind of quick because you're right, you can always pause the video and go tweak. I would say if you're not running Ideamaker 3.10 or higher at the time of this video recording, go get it, because there's some extra features in here like coasting that have been added that you'll see settings that I have. If you're not running 3.1, you won't get them. So go download that. It takes no time at all. And I've got 3D fill in here just for slicing purposes, and I'll show you some pictures of some of the successes I've had. So here we go. We're going to run this pretty quick. So if you want to create a new template, you can do it based on my feedback would be based on do it based on your PLA one, because you can always just make a copy of it and then you can just sort of tweak a few of the settings that's required. It's not far and away different than PLA, although it's PETG kind of flows a little bit more gummy. And it likes to blob and string, and it does not like to be squished. It likes to be laid down. So hopefully some of these settings will work well for you. It works pretty good in my shop for my machine, but you are not in my shop and you are not using my machine, so this is the starting point for you. Please, if you see some tweaks or you need to tweak it, then tweak it, but this should at least be a good starting point. So you want to create a new profile, hit your create button here, name it. So I name mine PETG Basic. Select your printer. You should already have your CR10 set up, and then you can use your existing PLA profile if you want to, and it'll just copy over all your settings, take a new name, and then you can change from there. Okay, so when you're done, hit OK, and I'm going to go to edit, and so again, infill and shells. I still do 20% in 3. Again, changes based on the model I'm printing, but that's my basic. I usually print with just a skirt. If you're doing something that's sort of long and thin, like, I don't know, like something like that, if you were going to print that, PETG is going to want to warp a little bit. It won't necessarily separate your layer lines, but it'll sort of not adhere to the bed, and you'll get a side that starts to sort of warp up like that. So print a brim if you're doing something really thin. Benchy, I did a skirt with Benchy. So let's go to advanced. And so like I print with a 0.6 nozzle mostly on my CR10, and I use my little ender to do my small stuff with like 0.4 nozzle, small layer lines at like 0.2, 0.1, point something or other. So I won't set your layer heights and things to what you normally print with. The big difference here on your layer tab is going to be your speeds. So I print PETG pretty slow. I print slow in general, but I print PETG pretty slow. You need to be patient with it. So my default printing speed is 25 millimeters a second. Same with my inner shell. My outer shell, I slow it way down to 20, and sometimes less if you're doing something real small. And then my X and Y movement is 60, and my Z speed, my Z axis movement is still the same at 25. So nothing crazy there. I still did a fixed Z seam, and I left my first layer speed slow at 20 and my flow rate at 120. That might be a bit high for PETG. You could probably get away with doing this at like 105 to 110. But anyway, that's been working pretty well. Extruder tab. So your extrusion width. Now I've got a 0.6 nozzle, and I found that since PETG likes to flow a little bit more gummy, and you don't use much of a part cooling fan, that if I tell the machine that my extrusion width is something a little less than my 0.6 nozzle, because let's face it, your 0.4 nozzle is not really 0.4. It's 0.41, or it's 0.42, or it's 0.38, depending on how new that bit is that they drilled out that piece of brass with, is how big your nozzle is, right? So I know, because I made my 0.6 nozzle, that my little drill bit is really 0.58. So I set my extrusion width to 0.58. So this is one of those areas where you'll have to tweak a little bit. If you've got a 0.6 nozzle, start with that. If you've got a 0.4, try setting it to like 0.38 or 0.39 and see how it goes. Or just stick it at 0.4, move around from there. But that would be one of the areas that you could play around with, that and flow rate. My retraction, again, keep it the same, 85, 5 or less. I had my epic, let's see if I can get this, my little epic benchy failure there. So I ran this guy at like a 6.5 millimeter retraction, and he clogged up the Bowden tube and failed. So 5 or less, and he came out great. A little extra negative value here on the restart amount, so I did a negative 0.3, and I enabled coasting with a 0.1 millimeter coasting value. Again, you won't get coasting unless you've got 3.1. So if you don't have 3.1, coasting's not going to be there for you, just move along. And I did an extra Z-hop here because, again, PETG doesn't like the nozzle to be scraping. So I had a little extra Z-hop and a little extra Z-hop at retraction. I'll show you where your global Z-hop is here in a second. Or sorry, global Z-offset. Infill, no real changes here other than speed, so 25 millimeters a second. Other than that, everything's pretty much the same. Tweak these as you need per your model. Okay. Support, again, I haven't had to print too much PETG with supports. If I do, other than the speed, I haven't messed with it, and I do add one solid base layer typically for the supports. They don't fail as much if you have one solid base layer. It comes out pretty good. Again, skirt or brim, cooling. So I set my minimum print layer time at 25 seconds for PETG. Again, you don't run your part cooling fan quite as high, so that even though this says 100, it's because I was doing benchy, and you can get away with benchy at 100% fan because it's a small model. If you're doing anything bigger than benchy, I'd say start your fan at 60%, like at layer 2 or layer 3, and leave it around there or lower. You can get away with doing no fan with PETG just fine. It likes to cool on its own and not be helped too much. Bed 70, and I start my PETG at 225. My inland PETG prints fine at 225. My ESUN PETG prints at 235. Everyone says they're the same, inland and ESUN, and don't tell my printer that because he don't know. They print different. So do a temp tower too. Big differences there. That's it. I didn't mess with the acceleration control or the jerk control with my PETG. All the defaults here, taking the firmware profiles or the firmware defaults have been just fine. For ooze, I have this force retract on layer change. You can play with this, avoid retraction inside models if you want. I haven't noticed a difference much other than for some reason on outer skin surfaces, like if you've got something flat, like if you're doing an emblem or something like that, or a keychain, you'll have a few less travel lines, but not much. It's not going to like do a combing no skin on like a cure thing. So, this to me is a coin toss. Turn it on, turn it off, doesn't really matter. And then I print check all the boxes here, check thin walls, fill gaps. This is where you set your global Z offset. So again, PETG likes to lay down versus being squished. So after I level the bed and do all that stuff, and you add a little extra Z offset, I know my machine likes a little 0.04 offset for PETG. I don't do this with my PLA, only my PETG. So again, if you've got your nozzle and you've laid down your first layer and the nozzle comes by and it scrapes that previous layer, you're going to pick up a booger and it's going to move around and it's going to stick to the nozzle, and then it's going to get stuck somewhere else on the part, and you're going to have a big old booger somewhere with lots of strings. So a little extra Z offset is fine. I would say set this to 0 first. Go do a couple of test pieces, and on your control box, right as it's printing, you hit the knob and go to control, and like your very first option is control and motion, and on that motion one, like your very first option there is Z offset. Click on that, and you can tweak it in 0.02 increments. So it's going to say 0.5 when you click on it. So change it to 0.52, 0.54, 0.56, and then when you get your setting, take that setting and add it here for your profile. Okay. And then I'll mess with the G. I don't need to mess with the G code other than if you want to put in a funny message or something. But otherwise, I leave all this stuff pretty standard. So okay. Save and close. Let's slice it. This is going to take me for 4 hours, almost 5 hours to do fill here. And actually, you actually don't need any infill with fill. So let's look at some pictures real fast, and then we'll bail out here. Let's look at. So here is this is my little test piece. I've done a couple little test pieces. Hold on, where'd he go? So this is my standard test piece for tuning on my my profile tuning. So flat walls, round walls, top layers, bottom layers, and bridging. And the cool thing is, if you go watch one of the Fusion videos down below, and you can make one of these in like 5 minutes. And then what you can do is Ideamaker is add them. You slice one, and you can make your own little temp tower and see which one works out better. But these take like 20-30 minutes to print. They're nothing. So I had good top layers, no gaps, good bottom layers. And again, this PETG comes out pretty glossy, so it looks over extruded, but it's actually not. This is really nice and smooth. It's just the light hitting because I've got it held right underneath an LED light. So there's the side. I did get a little bit of droop here, but again, you're not, it runs hotter and you're not using your fan as much. So you're not going to have as good a bridging with PETG as you would with PLA. So just keep that in mind. But nice smooth walls and rounds, and the Z-seam was pretty tight. So happy with it. Here's the bottom of the benchy now. If you're gonna torture yourself printing a PETG benchy, your first layer needs to be super slow. Otherwise, what it does is it just takes all of your text here and just drags it around the bed. So again, 70 bed, glue stick, all that good stuff. And if I didn't print that super slow, it just drug it around the bed and looked like crap. That's why the D here looks a little messed up, because it took that little piece out. But otherwise, came out pretty good. And there's the back, and I didn't get a good shot of it, but you can actually read the writing. You are going to get stringing with PETG. If you're not getting strings with PETG, you're either running too cold, and or your layers are not going to adhere to each other. So just be prepared for a little extra hairy prints with PETG, but they're easy to burn off, right? Get a little torch, get a lighter, they're gone like hairs, right? They're nothing. And that little extra effort is worth the strength of the part that you're going to get using PETG. It's a really strong material. It's great stuff. Here's the sides. Again, this was printed 0.28, so you'll see layer lines with this. But man, these are pretty smooth. I don't have any bulges. You're not seeing the infill pop through on the side and ghosting and stuff like that. So ghosting. So I know lots of you have done benchies and you've complained about ghosting, especially like around the portals. So if you want to work around for that, all you do is rotate your benchy about 5 degrees. Because what's happening with your ghosting is that your X is moving, and it's got those little micro movements after it's made a turn or stopped or moved around. So if you've tweak it just 5 degrees, then your X and your Y are moving at the same time, and it helps to eliminate a lot of that ghosting. So little tip, if you've got features and you've aligned those features perpendicular with your X or your Y, just rotate it 5-10 degrees. Tell me what happens. I bet you a lot of that ghosting goes away. So anyway, there you go. There's a PETG profile for you to play with and start with. So like and subscribe. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for the views. And we'll catch you on the next one. See you.